For as long as I can remember, I've always been intrigued by prehistoric animals, especially dinosaurs. I've also been a Pokemon fan for as long as I can remember, so I decided to bring both of these things together by talking about the Pokemon based on prehistoric animals. I'll be dividing these Pokemon into three categories. First is the fossil Pokemon, which covers all the Pokemon that can be revived from fossils in the main series games, such as Aerodactyl and Rampardos. Second, we have the non-fossil Pokemon that are heavily based on prehistoric animals such as Meganium and Tropius. The final category is non-fossil Pokemon who may have taken some inspiration from prehistoric animals but aren't that heavily based on them. Examples of this category would be Venusaur and Aggron. I'll be focusing mostly on the fossil Pokemon for this video, but I'll be giving attention to the other categories too. Starting off with the fossil Pokemon, Kanto gave us three: Aerodactyl, the Omanite line, and the Kabuto line. Starting with Aerodactyl, I think it's clear that its design draws inspiration from pterosaurs, which aren't actually dinosaurs. In fact, Aerodactyl actually has a genus of pterosaurs named after it, the genus Aerodactylus. While its name suggests that it was based on the pterodactyl, a second look would suggest otherwise. The known pterosaurs are split into two groups: pterodactyloids, such as the aforementioned pterodactyl, and basal pterosaurs. Looking at the basal pterosaurs, I think Aerodactyl's features line up more closely with them than the pterodactyloids it took its name from. Next up are Omanite and Omastar, which resemble the prehistoric Ammonites. Ammonites were a species from class Cephalopoda, which puts them in the same class as squids and octopi. Ammonites and other species in their subclass, Ammonoidea, were unique because of how most other cephalopods lost their shells, but ammonoids, along with their close relatives, the nautiloids, which are still living today, kept theirs. Being cephalopods also places them under the phylum Mollusca, placing them in the same phylum as slugs and snails, meaning Omanite and Omastar would be distant relatives of Pokemon like Gastrodon and Magcargo. Last for Kanto, we have Kabuto and Kabutops. These two seem to be based on both horseshoe crabs, which aren't actually crabs, and trilobites, which are extinct arthropods, meaning they're in the same phylum as insects, crustaceans, and chelicerates, which the aforementioned horseshoe crab falls under. While Kabuto seems to take more of its design from horseshoe crabs, Kabutops, on the other hand, does have more trilobite-like traits such as the shape of its head and the design of its back. I think it's also worth noting that both trilobites and horseshoe crabs actually predate dinosaurs, meaning Kabuto and Kabutops are definitely quite ancient Pokemon. Since Johto didn't bring us any new fossil Pokemon, we'll be skipping ahead to Hoenn. Hoenn brought us the Anorith and Lileep evolutionary lines. While Anorith does seem to be partially based on the trilobite, just like Kabuto and Kabutops, I think Anorith and the Armaldo also take inspiration from an ancient animal known as Anomalocaris. This strange-looking creature from phylum Arthropoda originated in the Cambrian period, just like the aforementioned trilobite. The Cambrian was known for the great increase in biodiversity known as the Cambrian explosion, and the Anomalocaris was a top predator of this time period. Their tough exoskeleton provided excellent protection, while their tendrils had many offensive uses, allowing this prehistoric animal to dominate the seas for quite some time. As for Lileep, while it is a grass type and comes from the root fossil, implying its origin is some sort of plant, its classification as the sea lily Pokemon points us to crinoids, also known as sea lilies or feather stars, a type of echinoderm which, while not extinct, has been around since the Cambrian period, long before the time of the dinosaurs, and as a result, have been seen in the fossil record in countless different time periods. Additionally, they were almost completely wiped out during the greatest extinction event in our planet's history, the Permian-Triassic extinction event, also known as the Great Dying. For the average viewer who has no idea what an echinoderm is, that's the phylum that starfish belong to. These marine animals may look like plants, but I assure you they aren't. Anyway, a look at some crinoid fossils shows that Lileep and Cradley don't seem too far off from these animals that have been around for hundreds of millions of years. Moving on to my personal favorite region, Sinnoh, we have the Cranidos and Sheldon lines. Cranidos and its evolved form Rampardos heavily resemble dinosaurs from the family Pachycephalosauridae, such as the Pachycephalosaurus and the Stygimoloch. These dinosaurs had incredibly thick skulls, which may have been used in competing for mates, similarly to what bighorn sheep do today. However, some researchers claim that their necks wouldn't have been able to survive these collisions. Cranidos and Rampardos spikes also appear to have been taken from these dinosaurs. Sciodon and Bastiodon, on the other hand, resemble ceratopsian dinosaurs. The most well-known ceratopsian dinosaur is undoubtedly the Triceratops, but Bastiodon's enormous frill does more closely resemble other ceratopsians, such as the Chasmosaurus. Sciodon's lack of horns leads me to believe that it took inspiration from Protoceratopsidae, a family of ceratopsians that lacked horns. Interestingly, ceratopsians and pachycephalosaurs together make up the Marginocephalia, a group of ornithischians or bird-hipped dinosaurs, making Sinnoh's two fossil Pokemon lines not too distantly related. The Unova region once again brought us two lines of fossil Pokemon, the Archon line and the Tirtuga line. Archon is classified as the first bird Pokemon, which makes it easy to say that this Pokemon was inspired by the early species of birds that roamed the planet. Early birds actually lived alongside dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period, sharing the skies with pterosaurs, which were discussed earlier along with Aerodactyl. More specifically, Archon and Archaeop seem to take inspiration from Archaeopteryx, an early bird that was thought to be the first bird for quite some time, until more recent discoveries took the title from it. The Archaeopteryx is often viewed as a transitional fossil that shows how non-avian dinosaurs eventually evolved into today's birds. Additionally, studies on the plumage of some dinosaurs and birds point to the possibility that Archaeopteryx had complex colors in its feathers, which may have inspired Archon and Archaeopsis' bright plumage, though other studies have suggested it had black feathers instead. Meanwhile, Tirtuga is the proto-turtle Pokemon, which led me to research on the earliest turtles. However, I soon learned that an extinct turtle known as Odontochelys changed our understanding of turtle ancestors by revealing that the earliest turtles only had the lower parts of their shell, known as the plastron. Tortuga and Caracosta both have complete shells, meaning we'll have to go farther down the evolutionary family tree to find the turtles that inspired these two Pokemon. Tortuga's Japanese name, Protoga, suggests a connection to Protostega, an extinct genus of sea turtles. The largest of the Protostega were some of the largest sea turtles ever, outclassed only by the Archelon. Speaking of Archelon, I do think it's possible that it was another inspiration of these two Pokemon, which isn't too far-fetched considering many Pokemon take inspiration from multiple different species of animals. The only issue here is that Protostega and Archelon were both soft-shelled species, while Tortuga and Caracosta look like they have hard shells, but it's likely that Game Freak just took extra inspiration from hard-shelled turtles along with Protostega and Archelon. Kalos brought us two more lines of fossil Pokemon, with the Tyrant line and the Amora line. It goes without saying that Tyrant and Tyrantrum are based on the most well-known dinosaur species, the Tyrannosaurus rex. Worth noting are Tyrant and Tyrantrum's patches of what appear to be fur. I think it's more than likely that these are actually proto-feathers, rather than fur. Contrary to what films like Jurassic Park would show you, many types of dinosaurs actually had proto-feathers which eventually evolved into the feathers of today's birds. While there is no concrete proof yet that the Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers, it's more than likely that it did, since one of its close relatives, the Eutyrannus, has been proven to have been covered in proto-feathers, explaining the white fluff that these two Pokemon possess. As for Amora and Aurorus, they clearly take heavy inspiration from sauropod dinosaurs. Aurorus' Japanese name, which I'm definitely about to butcher, Amaruruga, as well as their English names to a lesser extent, lead me to believe that this evolutionary line took inspiration specifically from the Amargasaurus. While many depictions of this dinosaur show it with rows of spines on its neck, others show these spines actually supporting a sail, which may have inspired Aurorus' own sail. Since Alola didn't introduce us to any new fossil Pokemon, we'll go to the most recent region, which is Galar. Those who have played Sword and Shield would know that Galar's fossil Pokemon are nothing short of bizarre. Galar's 4 fossil Pokemon are combinations of vastly different species of animals, which is probably a reference to how the early attempts at putting fossils together got a lot of things wrong and a lot of fossils of different species were mistakenly put together. In fact, even today, many fossils are mislabeled and wrongly categorized. Plus, the fact that the lady who revives the fossils in Sword and Shield is named Carolus doesn't really hide the fact that she's, well, careless. Back to the Pokemon themselves, there are 4 types of fossils in Galar to mix and match, leading to various results. The fossilized fish and bird serve as the upper halves of the fossils, while the fossilized drake and dino become the lower halves. The fossilized fish, which is used to make Dracovish and Arctovish, bears a resemblance to an extinct armored fish known as Dunkleosteus from the Devonian period, also known as the Age of Fishes. Animal Crossing players know from bladders that only fossils of the head and shoulders of this fish have been found, leaving the rest of the fish's body up to speculation. Next, the fossilized bird, seen as the top half of Dracozolt and Arctozolt, is likely based on early birds, similarly to Unova's Archin and Archaeops. I won't go into too many details since I discussed early birds already, but it is likely that prehistoric birds such as Archaeopteryx or other examples like the Microraptor inspired this fossilized bird. Moving on to the lower halves, I'll start with the fossilized drake, seen in Dracovish and Dracozolt. The Draco part of the name suggests a connection to the Dracorex, also known as Dracorex hogwartsia. Like the Hogwarts. Worth noting, however, that some research after its discovery has argued that the Dracorex is not a standalone species and is instead a young Stygimoloch. Another possibility is that the fossilized drake is based on Stegosaurids, a suborder of dinosaurs known for the plates on their backs, which Dracozolt and Dracovish do have. These plates were possibly used to regulate body temperature or to make the dinosaurs look bigger, among other possible explanations. It's a shame though that these Pokemon lack the Stegosaurus' iconic spikes on the tail known as the Thagomizer. Lastly, the fossilized dino seen in Arctozolt and Arctovish actually doesn't seem to be a dinosaur at all. Instead, I think it's likely that it is based on prehistoric aquatic reptiles such as plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and ichthyosaurs. In my opinion, the shape of this fossilized Pokemon's tail resembles that of ichthyosaurs the most, leading me to believe that Game Freak took most of their inspiration from them. Ichthyosaurs were a diverse group of marine reptiles with bodies that resemble sharks and dolphins despite not being closely related to either of them. They roamed the oceans from the Triassic period all the way to the late Cretaceous period, though they unfortunately didn't make it to the end of the Cretaceous. Now that I've finally gone through all the fossil Pokemon, it's time to go through other Pokemon that took heavy inspiration from extinct animals. Since we ended the fossils with a marine reptile, I'll begin this section with another one. Lapras resembles plesiosaurs, marine reptiles that once swam in Earth's oceans, now known for their distinct long necks. Speaking of long necks, Meganium and its evolutionary line, similarly to Aurorus, take inspiration from sauropods. I want to give attention, however, to Meganium's flower. Flowers actually first appeared during the Cretaceous period, which was when dinosaurs were more diverse than ever. Along with flowers comes fruits, which brings us to Tropius, another grass-type sauropod-like Pokemon with fruits hanging on its neck. Not quite dinosaurian, but Raikou clearly seems to be based on the extinct saber-toothed cats such as the Smilodon, which used their fangs to puncture the necks of their prey after a successful ambush. Another mammalian Pokemon that falls under this category is Mamoswine. Mamoswine and its evolutionary line may have been based on pigs, as suggested by the presence of the word swine in their names, but it's not hard to see that they resemble the extinct woolly mammoths too, especially Mamoswine. Mammoths lived in much colder areas than modern elephants, explaining their thick fur as well as these Pokemon's ice typing. Another prehistoric line of Pokemon, the Wimpod line, takes inspiration from isopods as seen in their name. Isopods aren't extinct though, so that's not why they've been included here. These Pokemon, especially Wimpod, resemble trilobites, just like Kabuto and Kabutops. Other bug types, Yanma and Yanmega, seem to take inspiration from the giant insects of the past. Yes, many Pokemon are just giant versions of insects, but the Mega in Yanmega's name seems to be taken from Meganeura, the largest known flying insect to ever exist. The Carboniferous period was a time in Earth's history that saw oxygen levels skyrocket, giving rise to countless gigantic versions of many insects we know today. Last for this category, we have Doduo and Dodrio. While their names imply a connection to the extinct dodo bird, they don't really resemble those birds at all. Instead, I think they're probably based on other extinct birds, such as the moas of New Zealand, which lacked wings unlike most birds. I know I said Dodo and Dodrio would be last for this section, but I'm adding one more line of Pokemon after already having recorded this part. Drippy and its evolutionary relatives, Dracloak and Dragapult, heavily resemble the now extinct Diplocaulus, an early amphibian known for its odd boomerang-like head. This animal being extinct probably explains the Drippy line's ghost typing. The odd shape of its head may have been used to make it harder for predators to eat it or for mobility in the water. As for the final category, Pokemon which have taken inspiration from prehistoric animals but only to a certain extent, I'm not too confident with the placing of some species and there's honestly a lot of overlap with the previous category, so some Pokemon can be moved between categories. Starting off this category is the evolutionary line at the beginning of the whole Pokédex, the Bulbasaur line. While they do have many frog-like characteristics, claws, teeth, and the suffix "saur" in their name imply reptilian and dinosaurian inspiration, though I can't pin down a specific type of dinosaur that they were based on. Another line of grass starters, the Trico line, mainly takes inspiration from geckos, though Sceptile does bear some resemblance to theropods, a group of dinosaurs that includes velociraptors and tyrannosaurs, among others. The crest on Sceptile's head actually bears resemblance to the Dilophosaurus, though that dinosaur only had one crest compared to Sceptile's two. Breloom, another grass type native to Hoenn, looks like a kangaroo with a mushroom on its head, but I do think that some of its design resembles Pachycephalosaurs, though to a lesser extent than Cranidos and Rampardos. Another grass type, while there's a lot of grass types, Torterel, which while clearly based mostly on tortoises, does have some ankylosaur-like traits. Particularly, the spikes on its body resemble those of the Ankylosaurus. The first Pokemon through this section not to be a grass type is Aggron, which probably got its horns from the Triceratops. Lastly, I'm putting Haxorus and Tyranitar together since they both have various reptilian traits that seem dinosaurian but don't strongly resemble any particular species. Haxorus's axe-like tusks may be based on Dicynodonts, tusked animals that were more closely related to mammals than reptiles. Well, Tyranitar's name may have taken inspiration from the Tyrannosaurus, but it could just be taken from the word tyrant. Tyranitar is generally agreed to be based on kaiju, monsters from Japanese movies such as Godzilla, and it's easy to see that some traits of kaiju do resemble those of dinosaurs. Anyway, that's all I have to say about these Pokemon. I really enjoyed putting two of the things I've loved since childhood together, so thanks for taking the time to watch this. For anyone interested, I'm leaving the sources I used in the description so you can read more about this topic. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. If you think I got anything wrong, feel free to comment down below, and goodbye.